Hi there YouTube. You're probably wondering what on earth I'm doing out in this dreadful weather, because it's pretty bad today. It's raining, we've had floods locally, so yeah, it's been awful weather recently. So yeah, you probably think I'm a bit mad out in this weather, and you're probably right actually. I probably am cracking up a little bit. Anyway, enough of all that. What we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about photographing woodland using shallow depth of field. So today I'm going to break from what I normally do when I'm photographing landscapes, and I'm going to open my aperture right up on my lenses. So I've got a 24-70 f2.8 with me, and I've got a 70-300 f4.5 with me. So we're going to try some shots with a shallow depth of field so that we get nice fall off, and I'm going to explain, or at least try and explain, how depth of field works depending on your focal length and where you position yourself from your subject, because it can differ quite a lot. Okay, so the first image I'm going to take is of this small sapling over here with the large pines in the background. Now, this is not going to be a world-beating image, and this is really just for the purposes of demonstration. So, apologies that it's not a great image. So, I'm using this 24-70. I've opened my aperture all the way down to f2.8. I've focused in on the leaves. Now that means that there's going to be some fall off in the background, so the background is not going to be perfectly sharp. But because I'm quite away from my subject, I'm a good maybe 15 meters from it. The background is still fairly visible unless you zoom right in. So I'm going to take that image again. So even though I'm using a really shallow depth of field aperture, f2.8, I still do have some depth of field. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move much closer to my subject, and then you'll see that the depth of field completely changes. Right, so I'm much closer to my subject now. I'm literally, I can actually reach out and touch it. I'm so close to it. And what you'll see now is when I take this image now, it's probably going to be blurred anyway because it's windy. Let's bump up the ISO so that we can get a faster shutter speed here. So I'm going to bump the ISO up to 400. Still at f2.8, so that's giving me a 40th of a second. Again, apologies for the fact that it's not a great image. This is just for the purposes of demonstrating. So what you'll see now when I zoom in to certain parts of the image is, by moving much closer to the image, it's completely changed the depth of field and how the image looks. So even parts of the tree are now out of focus, both in the foreground and in the background. And the background is thrown pretty much completely out of focus. So I found these two rather magnificent looking trees amongst all these pine trees, and they're beautiful. The amount of moss, and they're covered in really rich green moss, and the fact that it's wet as well kind of makes it pop a little bit more. So it's pretty stunning actually. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this camera on and video it with this camera so that I can show you what I'm looking at. Okay, so there's the two trees. So we've got this larger tree on the right here, and then another tree on the left there, and then these smaller sort of spindlier trees in the middle of the frame. I'm zoomed all the way into 70mm. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to spin the polarizer so that you can see the difference it makes when I spin it, and how it enhances and pops the colours. So, where to focus on an image like this? That's the problem. Should I focus on the tree on the left of the frame? Which might then throw the... yes, it does. It throws the tree on the right hand side of the frame out. So, I'm going to put this camera facing this screen so that I can show you how I'm going to get around that. Okay, so if I zoom into the tree on the right, let's just brighten it up a little bit so that you can see what's going on. Now, if I focus on that tree at f2.8, that's where my aperture's set. Now, if I go over to the tree on the right, that's in focus, pretty much. It's slightly off. So there, it's in focus now. But because my plane of focus is so shallow, if I now go over to my main tree, you can see that it's thrown it out a little bit again. So what I actually need to do now is close my aperture maybe to about f5, which means I now have to increase my shutter speed. Now if I go over to this tree and focus on this tree, what that's done is made my depth of field and my plane of focus a little bit deeper. So now the tree on the right and the tree on the left are in focus. So that means I can now, I want to underexpose because I want this to be a really moody scene. So now I can take that shot and both trees should be in focus. Okay, so I'm going to take this one last image with the long lens, just another demonstration of what we're talking about here. So again, with a long lens, that again changes the plane of focus and the depth of field. Now this lens doesn't stop down as much as the other one, so at the moment I've got it at f5. Okay, so the composition I've got framed up, it's a tree that looks like it's fallen and it's leaning right over, almost horizontal. I would say it's probably at about 30 degrees, and it kind of reminds me or invokes the idea of lightning streaks going across the sky, even though you can't see any sky in the shot. The backdrop is trees and the branches and the trunk are green with moss, which is nothing like lightning at all, is it? So at f5, I'm going to pull you around here so you can see again what I'm doing. So at f5, if I zoom in there, so I just need to focus on that area, make sure that bit's quite and sharp. Make sure that bit's nice and sharp. Now if I move to other areas of the image, you can see that the immediate background is in focus, but the ferns there at the bottom are now thrown out of focus. So even with f5, you still have some fall off and some out of focus background. So f5, ISO 50, 1.6 of a second, a whole stop underexposed, and there we go. That's a nice mean moody looking shot. Right, I am soaking wet, my gear's soaking wet, so I'm going to call it there. I'm going to end the video. I hope it was useful to you. I hope you found the information informative. Please give us a like, that really helps. And if you haven't done already, why not subscribe? Leave comments too. I always answer my comments. And I'll see you in the next video.